Hello there and welcome. You're watching World News Program coming to you live from All 24 News. Coming up next are the headlines. Zionist forces commit 19 new massacres in Gaza, resulting in over 165 deaths in the last 24 hours. A mass grave was dug at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis to bury the victims. Also in our news, the Zionist entity acknowledges that Hamas has regained control in parts of northern Gaza and Palestinian resistance asserts influence, compelling the withdrawal of the 7,107 Battalion from northern Gaza. Coming up next as well, the suspension of UNRWA funding spurs global condemnation as collective punishment and support for genocide in Gaza, warning of worsening humanitarian conditions due to this action. Also, President Abdelmadjid Tebboune emphasizes Algeria's support for resolving the Sudanese crisis through an internal approach, free from external interference. The details after the break. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off, in our topical news, Zionist forces committed 19 new massacres in Gaza, with 165 martyrs and 290 wounded in the past 24 hours. Since October 7th, a total of 26,422 martyrs and 65,087 injured have been reported. Among the massacres on Sunday, many Palestinians were killed in Khan Yunis due to airstrikes and artillery bombings. Al-Amal neighborhood was targeted, and raids in Tel al-Hawa and in western Gaza City caused many other casualties, including children and women. In related news, amid ongoing Zionist aggression in Gaza, residents buried 150 martyrs in mass graves at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. The siege imposed on the medical complex for weeks now prompted this response from the local community as bodies started to decompose. Here's Usama Ayadi with the report.
In the face of a dire need for safe burial grounds, Palestinians in Khan Yunis took matters into their own hands by digging a mass grave at a Nasser medical complex. This heartbreaking move was triggered by the decomposition of bodies in the hospital's mortuary amid a worrying odor and heightening concerns about a potential epidemic.
As you can see, we couldn't bury the dead in proper graves, even though the proper place to bury them is only 200 meters away from here. The past few days, we have buried 150 martyrs in the yards of Nasser Medical Complex, and today we are burying the rest of the martyrs and the patients in the mortuary, and there are 30 of them, including martyrs and dead patients.
This sad reality is a direct consequence of relentless Zionist continuous and deliberate attacks on residential buildings and even health facilities. Families unable to access the bodies of their loved ones for days or months were compelled to resort to burying them within the hospital premises.
They were all buried because their families couldn't be here and their bodies started to decompose and give off an odor. So that's why we buried them in the yard of the hospital, even though we have repeatedly requested safe passage so we can bury them in proper place, which is only 200 meters away.
Not far from Khan Yunis Hospital, Palestinians gathered at the site of a Zionist attack to mourn their beloved relatives, marking a scene filled with pain and despair. The Zionist forces continue their genocidal war across the Gaza Strip, orchestrating countless massacres against unarmed civilians. Tens of thousands have fallen victim to these war crimes, with countless others wounded. The relentless attacks make rescue operations nearly impossible for emergency teams as they face direct and deliberate targeting.
There has been a strike last night on the districts of Al-Aqad and the camp. We woke up in the morning and found all the area was destroyed. And when the men went out to check the area, a recon drone struck them. That's what happened. Some of them were injured and the others are dead.
The majority of Gaza's 2.3 million population has experienced displacement due to ongoing attacks, while the Zionist forces maintain tight grip, aiming to expel Palestinians from their own land. The struggle for survival persists amid the harsh reality of an oppressive occupation.
And on the ground, and in a significant development seen as a win for the Islamic resistance movement, Zionist forces acknowledge that Hamas has regained control in parts of northern Gaza. This victory underscores the failure of the Zionist entity to achieve its stated objectives, signaling its compliance with the conditions set by the resistance, as noted by many observers. The Palestinian resistance insists that any release of Zionist prisoners in Gaza depends on an immediate halt to the ongoing genocide that has plagued the Strip for nearly 4 months now. Izzat al-Rishq, a member of the Hamas political bureau, holds the Netanyahu-led Zionist government responsible for delaying the liberation of prisoners, putting them at risk of death from airstrikes or the occupation army's attacks.
بخصوص مفاوضات وقف العدوان وتبادل الأسرى.
With regards to stopping the aggression and hostage exchange, we have confirmed many times that we have dealt and are still dealing in all seriousness with the ideas of propositions, the mediation bodies in Qatar and Egypt, and there are constant communications that haven't stopped. We reaffirm that the return of captive Zionist soldiers to their families' lives will not happen until the aggression against our people stops.
And in another development, countries suspending UNRWA funding are facing condemnation for collective punishment against Palestinians, especially in Gaza. Criticized by UN bodies, the move threatens ongoing humanitarian efforts. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, for his part, urges donors to ensure UNRWA operations in Gaza despite the temporary suspension by non-countries. Zara Farjani reports.
UNRWA, Gaza's primary aid lifeline, is now the Zionist occupation's latest card against Palestinians. Following allegations from the Zionist entity about UNRWA staff involvement in Operation Flood on October 7th, the US, UK, Italy, Australia and Canada have hit pause on funding, dealing a blow to vital support. The United Nations is horrified by the impulsive move, branding the suspension of UNRWA funding as a collective punishment.
The Secretary General has been briefed by the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, regarding extremely serious allegations which implicate several UNRWA staff members in the terror attacks of October 7th in Israel. The Secretary General is horrified by this news and asked Mr. Lazzarini to investigate this matter swiftly.
UNRWA suffers from chronic underfunding, which impacts the quality of our services. Upholding refugees' rights is not only the responsibility of humanitarian and development actors, it is a responsibility shared with donors and host countries.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has urged the countries involved to rethink and resume funding, emphasizing the critical role UNRWA plays in the region. The Palestinian authorities, for their part, are criticizing this random decision, urging nations to reverse it and unfreeze funds crucial for Gaza's residents.
The countries that have announced this suspension, their aid amounts to 70% of the annual budget of the United Nations Relief and Work Agency. This measure is extremely dangerous, and it is our hope that it will be reversed.
The Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League are sounding the alarm about the deteriorating humanitarian situation, cautioning against double standards in funding responsibility. In displacement camps near Khan Younis, Gazans expressed their dismay, calling the fund halt a disaster for Palestinians.
Today they see us as if we were punished or guilty, the same as occupiers. It is a disaster if they are putting us on the same level as the occupiers.
The humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip has crossed all red lines, and now the suspension of funds worsens the crisis as the Zionist occupation intensifies its siege and genocide with the aim of eradicating an entire nation.
And in a similar note, Egypt's foreign minister expressed surprise on Sunday at the decision of some countries to withdraw their funding from UNRWA, stating that it would result in increased suffering for Palestinians. During a joint press conference with his Saudi Arabian counterpart, Sameh Shukri questioned whether the action was tied to the policy of collective punishment imposed on civilians in Gaza, emphasizing the need to continue asking such questions.
Will collective punishment be implemented against UNRWA employees in Gaza and on their ability to carry out their responsibilities? And will this collective punishment limit UNRWA's ability to operate and provide basic services, humanitarian aid? And will this collective punishment reach civilians in Gaza?
Similarly, in response to a question about the International Court of Justice ruling against the Zionist entity, Prince Faisal bin Farhan emphasized the need for the international community to make international humanitarian law applicable to everyone.
What we need is a decision from the international community. An international humanitarian law has value and is applicable to everyone, and this includes Israel, just like it's applicable to anyone else.
And this Sunday, the Arab League has an urgent meeting to agree on a shared stance about the International Court of Justice's decisions on Gaza. Palestine's permanent representative, Muhannad al-Akluk, says the meeting responds to Palestine's request for a special session at the permanent delegates level in light of the court's decision. The Sahrawi Republic's government welcomes the International Court of Justice's decision on South Africa's lawsuit against the Zionist entity for genocide in Gaza. They see it as a significant victory for international law, emphasizing that no one is above the law. Similarly, and on the same occasion, the Sahrawi government calls for accountability against the Moroccan occupation, urging defenders of international rules and humanitarian law to take necessary measures against atrocities and crimes committed in violation of the UN Charter and African Union principles due to the illegal occupation of parts of the Sahrawi Republic.
With this great victory of South Africa and its historic step, it sends a strong message to all occupying powers and authoritarian regimes in the world that no one is above the law. The impunity will no longer be tolerated, and that criminal acts, regardless of the identity of their perpetrators, will be investigated and prosecuted. The International Court of Justice has clearly established that the authority of sovereignty over the territory is vested in the Sahrawi people, who enjoy the inalienable right of self-determination and independence, exercised in accordance with UN General Assembly Resolution 1514 and other relevant UN resolutions relating to decolonization.
To other topical news now, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune expressed renewed support for the Sudanese people, describing the country as being targeted by forces of evil. In a joint press statement with Sudan's Sovereignty Council, President Abdel Fattah al-Burhan Abdelmajid Tebboune affirmed Algeria is back in for resolving Sudan's dispute through an internal vision, free from external interference. He emphasized that the Sudanese people should have the final say in resolving the crisis arising from evident rivalry.
والجزائر تقف إلى جانب الشعب السوداني لتجاوز الأوضاع الصعبة التي يعيشها هذا البلد الشقيق الذي تستهدفه هو الآخر قوى الشر، حيث كانت الجزائر ولا تزال مع حل أي خلاف أو نزاع داخلي برؤية داخلية بحتة، بعيداً عن كل أشكال التدخلات الأجنبية، حيث تعود الكلمة الأولى والأخيرة دائماً بمكونات الشعب السوداني الشقيق. نحن على يقين بأن السودان سيتجاوز هذه المحنة المنجرة عن تكالب مفضوح ضده.
President Tebboune also emphasized the alignment of views between Algeria and Sudan on various regional and international issues.
تتطابق وجهات نظر الجزائر والسودان حيال عديد من القضايا والمسائل الإقليمية والدولية. كما تحيي الجزائر موقف السودان الشقيق الداعم لعضوية الجزائر في مجلس الأمن الدولي، وستعمل جاهدة على نصرة القضايا العادلة في القارة الإفريقية والعالم، والحد من وطأة النزاعات والتوترات التي باتت تشكل خطراً داهماً على استقرار الدول وطمأنينة الشعوب.
For his part, Sudan's Sovereignty Council President commended Algeria's supportive stance for the rights of peoples. He urged Algeria to actively participate in the negotiating table to promote peaceful solutions, addressing what he termed as a conspiracy against Sudan.
Algeria, due to its stance and previous positions, as well as its recent well-deserved membership in the Security Council, receives our sincere appreciation and congratulations. We foresee this resilient nation continuing its unwavering support for both national rights and the legitimate aspirations of diverse populations towards a dignified life. We take great satisfaction in Algeria's active participation at the international forums, both be they of African or Arab nature, as they consistently uphold the principles of justice. We extend a warm and enduring welcome to Algeria, expressing our desire to witness the constructive and peaceful progression of discussions. It is our hope that such diplomatic dialogues will lead to effective resolutions, allowing us to collectively navigate through the current challenges.
And this press conference actually comes after Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune engaged in talks with Sudanese Sovereignty Council President Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan Abdurrahman during the latter's two-day official visit to Algeria. Private discussions took place at the presidential building in Algiers before expanding it to include delegations from both nations. Earlier, President Tebboune hosted an official reception for President al-Burhan featuring the national anthems and a review of the People's National Army formations. At the Sudanese leader's arrival at Houari Boumediene International Airport, he was greeted by Algerian Prime Minister Nadir al-Arbawi on behalf of President Abdelmajid Tebboune. To other news regarding Algeria, Algeria achieved its highest liquefied natural gas exports in 13 years last year, surpassing Nigeria and securing the fourth position among Europe's major LNG suppliers. To To other Africa-related news, in a joint statement on Sunday, the ruling military authorities in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger announced the immediate withdrawal of their countries from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The leaders cited full sovereignty in their decision, attributing the withdrawal to what they perceive as ECOWAS deviating from the ideals of its founding fathers, the spirit of African unity, and succumbing to foreign influence.
Leur Excellence, le Capitaine Ibrahim Traoré,
Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Colonel Assimi Goïta, and Brigadier General Abdurrahman Tiani, the respective heads of state of Burkina Faso, the Republic of Mali, and the Republic of Niger, taking full responsibility before history and responding to the expectations, concerns, and aspirations of their people, deciding full sovereignty to withdraw Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from the Economic Community of West African States, effective immediately.
Still with African news, Mali's transitional authorities have reportedly rejected their international obligations by unilaterally withdrawing from the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement linked to Algeria's mediation. This move poses a threat to peace, security, and territorial integrity in the country, with concerns that it reflects a desire by the transitional authorities to remain in power. Financial sources indicate a planned withdrawal over 2 years, challenging dialogue and international mediation. The authorities have increased weapons acquisitions, including drones, despite widespread agreement that a military solution is unlikely. Mali faces heightened risks of civil war, jeopardizing territorial integrity and exacerbating security issues with terrorist groups. To other continental news now, Biden criticized Trump during his presidential campaign in South Carolina, aiming for increased support from black voters. In Las Vegas, Trump defended himself against verbal attacks from Nikki Haley and pledged support for the Texas border. Here's Aslam Said.
In a fiery campaign address, President Joe Biden slammed his Republican adversary Donald Trump, dubbing him the only loser I see in the run-up to the South Carolina primary. Biden underscored Trump's perceived neglect of black citizens' rights and painted him as a menace to both the U.S. economy and democracy. Despite Democrats facing an uphill battle in winning the state in November, Biden aims to solidify support among black voters. However, his speech faced interruptions from protesters expressing concerns about his stance on the Zionist genocidal war against Palestinians in Gaza. Meanwhile, on the Republican front, former President Donald Trump took to Las Vegas, asserting that he feels sharper now than 20 years ago in response to recent criticism from fellow Republican presidential contender Nikki Haley. Shifting focus to Biden, Trump highlighted border security, pledging unwavering support to Texas. The next vote in the Republican presidential nominating race is a caucus in Nevada on February 8th. Notably, Nevada has 2 contests in February, with Nikki Haley participating in the February 6th primary and Trump opting for February 8th Republican caucuses, the only ones that count for delegate awards.
Concerns rise over a potential civil war between Texas and the U.S. government due to the migrant influx and the removal of barbed wire on the Texas-Mexico border. Differences between Republicans and Democrats in Texas create a challenging situation for the U.S., impacting its international standing and increasing internal tension. Here's Salman Asib with the report.
The USA is grappling with a significant influx attributed to its borderless governance policies. Fed up with this situation, Texas is opting to reinstate its barbed wire border. The federal government deemed Texas's move unacceptable and dispatched federal forces to dismantle the barriers. Subsequently, the Supreme Court of the United States weighed in on the matter, but Texas Governor Greg Abbott adamantly refuses to comply with the American administration's directive to remove barbed wire on the Texas-Mexico border.
I expressed my dissatisfaction with last Monday's 5-4 Supreme Court decision in favor of the federal government, which overturned an appellate court injunction allowing Federal Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire installed by Texas officials on the border with Mexico.
former President Donald Trump called on all other states to come to the aid of Texas by sending their respective National Guards. Speaking in Las Vegas, pledged unequivocal support to Texas, characterizing the border as a big gushing wound that needs immediate attention.
Nobody to this day can explain why this open wound is good for our country. And even politically, why is it good politically? First of all, with the Hispanic vote, we're doing better now than the Democrat Party. So I think it's good for us. But we're going to seal the border, complete it, and we're going to repeal the invasion. You know, remember that in 2016 when I campaigned, everybody remembers that, we had a very bad border. Nothing like today.
Tensions in the South prompt 25 Republican-led states to back Governor Abbott in securing borders. Concerns arise that states would not have joined the Confederation if they knew it could lead to a sections invasion by the Confederation itself, as they do perceive the situation as an immigrant invasion. Remarkably, the legal interpretation suggests that Texas might have the right to declare war on the USA, adding a highly unprecedented and tense dimension to the situation.
And finally in our news, the Algerian handball team returned to Algiers from Egypt on Sunday after participating in the African Handball Championship. They secured the silver medal and qualified for the World Cup finals, losing in the championship match to the host country, Egypt. The team was welcomed in the airport's honorary hall by the Algerian Minister of Youth and Sports, Abdurrahman Hamad. The end of our news. Thank you for watching and take care.